We're all here, gonna be ready to get going. So with that, I'm Bruce Warner, the president of the TriMet Board of Directors, and I'm gonna call the regular meeting and briefing of the November 13th, 2013 to order. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, first on the agenda is Craig Prosser and Travis Stovall to give us a report on the strategic financial plan update. Craig, is that to you?
Yep. Got too many pieces of paper around here. Just a minute here. The Strategic Finance Plan Subcommittee met a couple weeks ago and talked about where we need to go. We did receive a letter from ATU with input, which I really do appreciate. And I believe, Board President Warner, you have responded to that letter. What we ended up talking about was with our financial guidelines that's out there, we've made some adjustments to that. But what we ended up talking about is that we really haven't received a lot of public input on the strategic financial plan, and we really feel the need to do more to get public input. And I think the ATU letter also commented about needed more time to review and consider some of these things. So we've come up with a different strategy and timeline for the development and the adoption of the strategic financial plan. We've taken our existing guidelines and have redrafted them basically as directives to staff to use in the development of the fiscal year 15 budget. The idea then is this gives staff some direction to move forward, gives them a framework to start developing the budget, so we're not holding that up. But at the same time, it gives us a chance to test some of these guidelines and see what implications they might have in the real world as that budget is put together. So what would happen to fund balance reserves and that type of thing. Not locking it in stone, but basically providing a road test, and we think that that would be valuable. With that, then, we are talking about moving the adoption of the financial plan out to at the time that we actually adopt the fiscal year 15 budget, so May of 2014. In that interim, we'll continue to work on the plan as a subcommittee. There's, I think, some additional improvements we can make in terms of explanatory materials, but most importantly then is that the subcommittee, Travis and myself, with some assistance from the board president and the general manager, will be more proactive about reaching out to our partners, stakeholders, to sit down with them and discuss these, get more feedback, and hopefully that feedback will help us in crafting tighter guidelines or more effective guidelines. And at the same time, we'll have the feedback from how this will be playing out in the budget. And so hopefully when we bring this back for final adoption, it'll be a well-vetted, well-thought-out product. So the strategy right now will be to bring the redraft of the guidelines as directives, which you should have in front of you there, would come back to this board for adoption in a resolution as directives to staff for the development of the FY15 budget at our next meeting, December 11th. So if there, Travis, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great synopsis of the way the process is going to go. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to take these words and actually put them into action by way of, as you said, a road test of the budget that gives us some insight as to if there are going to, what are some of the unintended consequences or the intended consequences that come from to mapping out these guidelines. So I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for the board to get some additional insight, and then also for the general public and stakeholders to have an opportunity to see what some of the impacts of some of these things are. I think that begins to make it a little more concrete and a little more real in their ability to give us responses. So I think it's a great opportunity to move forward.
Do any board members have any questions or concerns about this new approach?
Good morning. I have one concern, or I guess a question about point number 3, the adequate operating and cash reserves. Is this still going to maintain the policy of at least 3.5 months of operating?
Yes.
Okay, I want to ensure that that is written in or it is referred to so that, as I said, just forbidding anything happens before the next budget comes up and a new board is setting because we all were, still over in the Bermuda Triangle or something like that. Somebody would understand that this was supposed to be that and not say, well, we have enough adequate, and inadequate in that definition may be less than a month. So that's adequate.
Right.
But-
And what we added on the tail end of number 3 there is as required by TriMet's existing unrestricted fund balance and contingency policy, which is where that 3 months.
So that piece will be.
So
in
that, so that is there.
Okay, thank you.
With that.
What's better? Joe?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Joe.
sorry, Joe.
I'm going to echo what the good doctor said. It wouldn't hurt my feelings to have 3.5 spelled out someplace outside of the word policy,
Oh, okay.
just so it's clear. And we do, moving forward with more accountability and transparency, make it easier for somebody. Oh, yeah, okay, that's
I don't see a problem with that.
good.
Just note, the current policy is 2.5 to 3, has been the current policy. But one of the things that we did want to drill down with, we mentioned this to the subcommittee, is on the adequacy of that policy over the next few months and what it means in terms of TriMet service levels as we face a recession. So we have some, I think, additional work to do to see if those are the right numbers, but the current policy is 2.5 to 3.
Please. In my view, we're still in a recession, but we won't argue economics. I think all of us have been burned, and so I would be very conservative. I would add for more reserves because, especially coming out of the construction world, going up and down. So,
Well, I think also, at the retreat, we did talk about building off the existing cash balance policy and start working towards some sort of countercyclical or rainy day fund reserve. So,
that's it. I like that term.
Yeah.
Because we all go through that in our own life.
yeah.
Why don't we do it here? Thank you.
Okay, so we'll tweak the number 3
Once you, yeah.
to be more explicit, and then this will be back before us on December 11th.
And I guess I'd just say, I think, based on, again, the letter from the union, as well as others, I think this is a great opportunity to step back, get some more input and feedback from folks. And as you said, we'll have a real live budget so people can understand what these policies mean. So I think this will be a very good exercise and a very good instructive exercise for both the board and our stakeholders. So good plan. Thank you very much. All right. Then let's move on. General Manager's report. General Manager's comments, Mr. McFarland.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, just a few quick updates. First of all, let you know where we are with mobile ticketing. As of this morning, we had 43,000 downloads of the app. So it's been really well received. We've actually have sold 235,000 tickets over the electronic system. So clearly, a lot of people are taking advantage of this new system, and so we're very pleased with that. Just another quick update on the bridge naming. As you know, we're in the midst of soliciting names from the community related to the Portland-Milwaukee Bridge. As of this morning, over 2,250 name submissions have been received. You can thank your colleague, Board Member Stovall, for being part of the committee that will be looking at all of that. Obviously, we'll try to weed out,
One or two.
the Bart Simpson Bridge kind of notions, but that will come up. But
Lisa Simpson.
sorry.
Lisa Simpson.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll continue with that process. Again, that's open to the public to participate at trimet.org until December 1st. So we'll keep that open. I also wanted to let you know that based on both the investments you made and the frequent service restoration, plus our normal series of retirements that we are hiring at a very rapid pace right now at TriMet. And so we are reaching out to the community looking for the right kind of applicants, people who have a base of customer service within them, and also working very hard to make sure that our applicant pool looks like the community that we serve. Between now and March 2nd, we'll be hiring over 78 new bus operators. We'll also be hiring over 30 positions that include rail and bus training supervisors, as well as other positions in transportation and maintenance. So big effort on the part of our human resources department to really make those positions available and to really reach out. We actually did have our own career fair earlier this month at the Oregon Convention Center and had over 250 applicants from that. Again, we're also working very closely with a number of community-based organizations to sort of see if we can begin to have references of qualified applicants to us. So, and it's an important effort.
Outreach to people who served in the armed forces? I'm sure it's someplace in the policy, but I just
We
want to bring it up in public that,
we do that indeed, and indeed, TriMet as well as other people in this industry have been really active in trying to recruit our armed services veterans. So appreciate that.
I mean, we find in our industry that they make very good applicants for our apprenticeship.
Yeah.
They know how to follow orders, how to get out of bed in the morning, compared to some other younger people, and they have a drive.
I would tell you some of our star employees are veterans, and
So good.
Again,
Good to
it does fit to the kind of organization that our transportation and maintenance divisions are, which have a lot of SOPs and rules to follow, and so that sort of mentality is very helpful. I also just wanted to as I sent you a notice on this, but just to note that we did announce a reorganization of our operations division last week. That division had historically represented 85% of our workforce, so it was really a huge undertaking for any person. But we thought that in order to truly focus more on the reliability issues that we know are coming with the aging of the system, that we split that into two pieces. There's a transportation division, which is still the bulk of employees, operates the rail as well as the bus operators and the dispatch system and the trainers and other things associated with staffing that effort and supporting it over time. And that will be led by our current executive director, Shelley Lomax. Shelley in the back. And then there is the maintenance division that will really be focusing much more on the investments that we need to make to ensure reliability and a state of good repair on the system. So we're trying again to really up our game related to that effort and the aging of the system. I recently ran into at a conference the general manager of the MBTA, and I thought that they would be would not be sympathetic at all to the maintenance efforts that TriMet has, but actually her view of it was that the hardest part of the life of the system is when you hit about 30 years old, because all of a sudden a lot of things start to go wrong all at once, and that's kind of where we are. So we have a really major effort ahead of us that you've supported in the budget, and now we're organizing ourselves to do that. So I also wanted to note on the staffing front, one, for me, sadder note, which is that Olivia Clark, our Executive Director for Public Affairs, will be stepping down on November 22nd. She calls this, she's heading off on a self-enhancement sabbatical. Now, I guess you get to define that yourself. But I would suspect that this is mostly retirement for a while, but she may put on the white hat and come back and do some good work around the community. I know she's very involved with the Providence boards and other things, so I know that she'll be very active part of the community and a strong supporter of public transit in doing that. Clearly, she's been a key trusted colleague for all of us, but certainly for me over the past years, and has a great resume, if you will, of success from TriMet, including the lobbying effort that delivered the state lottery funds for the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail, as well as additional authorities related to the payroll tax. So I'm sure she's going to be around. I'm sure you'll see her, but I just wanted to acknowledge that transition. We'll be in the midst of recruiting, and I'll keep you very posted on that. A very difficult job to fill. Both Olivia's predecessor and Olivia have been institutions within the region, frankly, much more than just a staff person at TriMet, really in key to the whole transportation structure of the region. And so we're a very heavy load to try to find a replacement. Finally, I did want to review with you the budget timeline, and we included a general outline of the budget process this year. It may depress some of our staff that we're already beginning to think about this, but we are piecing together our financial forecast, which is where we start the budget process, as well as some general outreach efforts that we want to begin related to our efforts for the budget next year. We would begin a discussion on December 11th about some of the key issues that we face. We would begin to launch some outreach, particularly with our online tools at that point in time. And then we begin to have a series of discussions with the board about budget priorities and how they fit the financial guidelines that you just reviewed. And then the rest of the process will really follow what I think has been the traditional timeline, which is that I introduce a budget that hopefully fits the best, in the best case we can, the criteria and guidance the board has been provided at your March briefing. And then at your March meeting, you would approve the budget for submission to TSCC. Again, that's not adopting the budget, it's approving it for TSC's review. And then move on to an April, May budget consideration, including any ordinance associated with service or fares that need to be considered in a two-meeting sequence of related to ordinance. So that would be April and May. And again, the budget takes effect on July 1st. And as Board Member Prosser noted, also associated with the budget this time will be the continued review, hopefully, and leading to adoption of the strategic financial plan at the same time. So that would be part of that same, if you will, series of actions associated with the budget. And I did just want to touch very briefly on some of the issues. Obviously, one of the key things we're looking at is how do we continue to restore the important service that we've lost during the recession, and particularly the frequent service. And so that may be one of the questions about the pace and our ability to do that over a period of time that we'll be investigating as we look at the budget. Also, all of those fare policy issues that you addressed and talked about at the board meeting, board retreat, will have to get at some point in time wrapped up either for this budget or pushed forward to future conversations. And that, of course, includes what do we do with Honored Citizen Youth Fairs, the Portland Public School Pass Program, and the level of appropriation for the low-income fare mitigation program. So those are all issues that will be part of that overall conversation. I would also note that we intend to have involved in the budget all of our advisory committees, including bringing back together the General Manager's Budget Task Force, TIAC, CAT, and all the other advisory groups involved in these conversations. So hopefully as the budget advances, you'll have the best reconnaissance from those groups as well as from a robust public outreach effort that will continue with that as we have traditionally with the budget. So with that, I pause for any questions or thoughts or
Looking around the board, I do have a couple comments, and just following up on your last point here. I think our schedule this month kind of got messed up because of the Thanksgiving holiday, so that's the reason we're having a combined business meeting, briefing, a little more briefing here than normally, because we're not going to have our normal business meeting at the end of the month on the 26th. So at that time, I think what we wanted to do as a board, look at that package of those issues that you talked about, because I think at the retreat, there was, I think, a general feeling that there was a support for a 2.5-hour transfer that was, I guess, a little different than what was proposed by Opal and Bus Riders Unite of the 3-hour. But I think there was the desire to look at all of these issues in a whole so we can make a decision, at least informed, understanding a total financial picture. What it sounds like, based on what you're doing, is you're continuing to work with the Portland Public Schools, and you were hoping to get some resolution by the end of this month, first part of next month. That doesn't look like it's going to happen, is that right?
That would be right, Mr. President. We actually, the goal originally was December 2nd, but it looks like those conversations won't proceed to resolution until January, February of next year.
So what that says to me is that I think Opal and Bus Riders Unite and all the others actually deserve some action by the board, either yay or nay on the transfer policy. And so what I'm going to ask the general manager to do is bring forward an ordinance that can be considered for first reading at our first meeting in December that does deal with, number one, the Opal proposal. And based on what I heard from the board, I'd like to see the ordinance drafted with a 2.5-hour transfer time with the board. If somebody wants to make an amendment to bring it back to 3 hours or something different, we can have that dialogue when that goes on. And I think there may be some other minor things that you want to take care of in a fair ordinance to deal with some things I know are going to be coming up that we gave you on direction previously.
Right. And I would just note that there's one particular item that we might choose to include as well, which is remember our 2-year ago fare increase related to the lift system, where the agreement was to bring the lift fare up to the same as the adult fare, and we're a nickel short of that, and so we're due that increase again, that last increment in April. So we might, with your discussion, we'd include that in that same ordinance. And I think that's consistent with the policy and where the CAT has been in terms of their understanding of that. May not like it, but their understanding of the issue. And then we also were talking about the appropriation level for the low-income fare mitigation program, and that may be one of the offsets that would be considered. Okay. So we would roll those together.
Perfect. Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment. I would just like to encourage the board that we really need to move on the transfer policy piece. We have been talking about that for 2 years or more, and I just think that we owe it not to move forward, not only to all the work that's been done, not only by the board, but by Opal and Bus Riders Unite. So I think I would like to encourage us. I think that we can't wait any longer, and that we have a commitment that in December that we will move forward with that.
Depends on the action of the board, but yes, we'll consider it, and the board can say yes or no,
Yeah.
based on that ordinance. But yeah, I think that's right to do, and I agree with you. It's time to make a decision. Okay with that? Any comments? No. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record.
No. I said
Oh, I'm
no,
sorry.
no,
Did you?
no. I had my card up for a
Okay, I'm
long
sorry.
time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, and I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
I know we had some discussions in the board retreat. There were some who indicated that they would do this and would do that, and then there was others, at least one who said wasn't ready, not at that point. And now arbitrarily to introduce a direction to the general manager to bring back an ordinance without an official piece of some more discussion on this, and we talked about doing a complete package of looking at other options. This is only one option that has been put on the table. And yes, there has been time spent talking about that. There's been time spent talking about a lot of other things that we have not finally brought to a conclusion as of yet. I do not want to leave this room and read in another article an assumption that we said something that we have not really said. So if we're giving consideration in December, when you use the terminology move forward. You're indicating, I think, to others something else that is not what the board is saying. We're still saying we will consider, and even as the other opposition, correspondents have said, we said we would consider this in light and dealing with other options. So I do not want it to be said that the board has said that in December they're going to move forward with the transfer policy, and that means that we're going to do that. That is not where I'm at, and I can't stop people from the First Amendment rights of saying what they want to say, and so therefore I'm exercising mine to say I'm not settled with that piece going out like that. I've seen too many other things come back that's been written and assumptions made that, in my understanding of where I'm sitting, is not the agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Bethel. If I wasn't clear, what I want to make clear to everybody, when I say moving forward, I'm saying bringing it forward to the board for a vote to either say yes or no. So we will have, it's my belief that we'll have a very robust debate at our meeting, first meeting in December, talking about that ordinance and whether we want to approve that. But again, it's up to the board to make that decision, so there's no commitment or no promises that that will occur. Okay? So thank you for making that clear. Yes?
Actually, just procedurally, this will be an ordinance,
Yes.
so it would require a first reading and then 30 days later, a second reading. Can we have a full discussion under first reading?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure,
But just,
because what that says is
And-
that we would not be taking final action, or it wouldn't be a vote. I mean,
Right.
Under first reading, that would not occur until 30 days later.
That's it.
Thank you, and that's very true. And the other point that I would make is that if an amendment is accepted to the ordinance at the first reading, then there's a new first reading that occurs
Oh, okay.
at the next meeting. So in other words, it has to be stable for that review period before your final vote.
So again, for everybody again, what that says is we have the first reading, we actually can't gavel down on a final action until 30 days later, and even later if we actually choose to amend the ordinance and change it.
But to Dr. Bethel's point, but we can have a discussion.
You bet. That's
Under first reading.
You bet.
so.
You bet. Good. All right? All right, thank you. So anything else under General Manager's report?
The one thing that I wanted to particularly note, and I should have noted at the outset, but thankfully, sitting to my right is a new interim general counsel for TriMet, Shelley Devine. I'm sure you'll all very much look forward to working with her, and I think she's had the chance to meet each of you, or if not, shortly, individually. But I also want to just make the note that if there are questions that you have about policy or procedure, she's an excellent resource for you in that regard, and works for you in that regard as well. So I just wanted to make that note,
Thank
and to welcome Shelley here.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. All right, good. And welcome. All right, let's move on then to the East Side pedestrian safety improvements. Harry Saporta?
As Harry comes up, maybe just a few words of introduction as we boot up the PowerPoint, and you have copies in your supplemental little blue folder here. As many of you know, and as I noted earlier, our East Side Max system is now approaching 30 years old. And the state-of-the-art related to pedestrian improvements 30 years ago is not the state-of-the-art today. And so as we begin our rehabilitation of the older sections of our line, we are paying close attention to the pedestrian improvements. We've already made a number of improvements along the line over a period of time, and I wanted Harry to share what those current best practices are and some of our efforts to rehabilitate the system in that regard. So, Harry?
Good morning, President Warner and board members. Over the years, TriMet has made there's been enormous growth and development along the light rail lines. And for this reason, it's really important to do a periodic assessment of whether the current pedestrian safety measures are effective and are still applicable. It's also important to keep in mind that that no one single treatment really can be applied to all of the alignments because of the great variety in the configurations and the operating environments. And we've also learned quite a bit over the years as to what appears to work and what doesn't appear to work so well. So with that, there are really 4 design principles that we have to keep in mind. One is to respect the urban environment. What this really means is maintaining the existing travel patterns to the extent possible. So we study that. Secondly, it's to comply with pedestrian light rail operator expectancies. What does that mean? That means really assessing what are the pedestrian behaviors, what would we expect them to do, how do we expect them to behave, and then to simplify decisions and minimize user confusion, and then lastly, to transmit the level of risk. Is it safe to cross? With those principles in mind, we looked at 4 key areas along the east side alignment. We looked at the Gateway Transit Center, the Gresham. There are 4 crossings in Gresham that we looked at. We also looked at 97th and East Burnside. And then, as a much larger effort, looking at the Renew the Blue State of Good Repair project. First, I'd like to give you an overview of the Gateway Transit Center. As you probably know, Gateway is the busiest transit stop that we have within the alignment. It serves about 2.5 million boardings annually. That's because we have multiple bus routes along this line. There are 3 MAX lines that converge at the station. There's a large clinic. There's a large shopping center just across from the transit center, a very large park and ride, and then there's the ODOT multi-use path along the alignment. And all of these facilities serve to provide daily travel around the Gateway area. So with that in mind, what improvements were we looking at? First of all, we were looking at channeling pedestrians and cyclists at the Gateway Center to control them into a predictable pathway, improve ADA accessibility, improve pedestrian awareness at crossing locations, provide better cues to identify pedestrian intent at a crossing. This is for the benefit of the rail operators and the bus operators. And then to improve security by fencing off a very large area where there was quite a bit of trespass into the trackway or across the bus travelways. So what I will be doing now is providing you with a series of photos because I think that's really the best way to illustrate what those improvements are. Also, keep in mind that some of these improvements are still underway. We have not completed all of these projects. So with this photo, what we're seeing is a before and after. And what we were doing in attempting to do here was to begin to channel pedestrians into a particular pathway and to orient them onto so as to face the oncoming trains before entering the tracks. It's also to encourage the pedestrian to give an intent to the rail operator. So if you look at the photo, what it does is that as they begin to cross, they are forced to look towards the left where the approach of a train might be coming, would be coming from. We also improved the signage at this location by placing pavement markings and to highlight that this is a crossing and to encourage them to look both ways before crossing. This is something that we've always been taught. You should look both ways because trains do operate in both directions. At this location, we also made a number of improvements to bring it up to current ADA standards. With the next one, this is at the North Bus Loop. The problem here was that people were traveling to and from across the roadway. They would use the wide gravel area. In other words, the the pathway was not always well-defined, and we were trying to channel and focus the pedestrian movements across the busway there. Afterwards, what we did was we began to put in channelization. You can see some of that just if you look at the photograph to the right. You can see some of the pipe railing to the left. We also provided striping in the crosswalk to provide visual indication as to where we wanted the pedestrians to cross. There was also fencing provided in a landscaped area, and you can see some of the fencing in the photograph to the right. I think this is a pointer. There it is. So there's some fencing here and fencing here. And then we also use chevrons to, again, orient the direction that we wanted pedestrians to cross. Tactile warning strips were placed here to, again, provide a treatment to indicate to the pedestrians that they were about to cross an area where there was heavy bus traffic.
Harry?
Yes.
In the picture, on the far side there where the chain link is coming down,
Yes.
and it looks like there's a large cement area, yeah, you got
Yes.
it there. Can people come there, and would that fence encourage or allow them to duck from that cement pad rather than going around the fence to the crosswalk?
In this area right here, this is a parking area that we've created, but it really doesn't lead to anything because the fence wraps around. So typically, they would not congregate in this area.
Yeah, so people couldn't get in there.
No, well, they can get in there, but there's nowhere to
But
go.
it'd be difficult, yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. So
Okay.
that's why also this fencing here, there's a fence along this curb line. So the only realistic way to cross and to get to the multi-use path is to use this actual crossing right here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Again, the attempt is to try and channel pedestrians and guide them in the direction that we wish them to go.
Right.
And in this area also, bus traffic is one way. So with this orientation, they would be tending to look to the left, they being the pedestrians. In this photo, what we had previously in this area, and you can see some of the signing was beginning to wear, is that the crossing was not very well delineated, and this whole area was very wide, and we saw quite a bit of trespass down into the trackway. There were no barriers to guide them. Afterwards, we began to install a series of pipe rails so the pedestrian would travel into this area, again, with train traffic coming from the left. It would orient them towards the direction that the train would be approaching. And the stop here sign would be in place with the tactile warning strips. And note, we also provided other guides to indicate exactly where the pedestrian was to cross. Look both way signs were also placed to encourage looking in both directions, even though that the orientation was to get them to begin to look to the left.
Public has a question. How long was it like this before it became that?
Several years,
How many several?
25.
25 years. This is my question as the John Q. Public.
What-
Why
what's your-
did it
what's-
take 25 years for that to happen? Can we not, when we build these things, when we build this new light rail system, when we build all these systems, can we build them like this first and have them engineered properly? And just
Thank-
let the engineers warn that They need to address the issues of pedestrian safety at the point of development.
Thank you, appreciate your comment, but maybe you could hold comments till we're done here. And I think we got a public forum where you can ask those questions, all right?
Okay.
Thank you.
But again, those questions, as it's here, as everybody's here, we address the issue.
Understand.
It's no.
So maybe we can open up after this, but let you get through your presentation. Then we'll.
Sure.
Thanks. I appreciate you letting me interrupt for a minute.
Okay. So now we're looking at another area of the transit center. And here we had an area of where buses travel. Oops. And so the buses would lay over in this area and serve stops and then travel to the north. What we saw was that many of the passengers would cross into this area because this was considered non-TriMet property, and they would smoke or tend to loiter. So in cooperation with ODOT, we erected this fence to discourage the movements across this travelway. And I'm happy to report that this has been extremely effective. We do not get very many pedestrians or passengers any longer congregating in this area before because of the fence that has been placed here. So what we have now done is discouraged risky behavior crossing in front of buses as they begin to pull away from their stops and go towards the north to exit the transit center. One of the unintended consequences that we identified after the improvements were made is that this pipe railing here, previously, some believed that it was still advantageous to take a shortcut, and you can see there's the crossing in this area here. It was still advantageous to take a shortcut and walk along the tactile warning strip or, worse, into the trackway. So we placed these added signs, which we're now doing at all of our locations where we use this type of pipe railing, including in the west side. That's an overview of the Gateway Transit Center. In Gresham, we are focusing initially on 4 crossings: Division Street, Main, Hood, and Roberts. And this is a project that is still underway, and it hasn't been completed, and we expect that to be completed in the spring of 2014. But I do have a series of photographs that can illustrate the improvements that we're making. So you can see here where there's an individual that is trespassing or crossing not in a manner that we would encourage pedestrians to cross. So we are beginning to put in a series of pipe railings to begin to channel the pedestrians into a crossing rather than into this area where it's not channeled and it's not focused, so that it provides the rail operator a better indication of intent to cross, and they can focus their attention into the crossing in this area here. What we will also be doing is installing part-time warning devices that will also signal the approach of a train. This will be done at all 4 crossings that we have. And then at 97th and East Burnside, this is the current crossing here. And currently, we do not have a way to channel the pedestrians. And so the intent is to begin to provide pipe railings again, to channel them across this area. The lines of sight also needed to be improved, and that's why we're moving the crossing from this area to one of this area. This improvement will also include a part-time warning device to indicate the approach of a train. And then lastly, as part of our Renew the Blue project, we are looking from Hollywood to 181st and also the Ruby Junction at crossing at 197th, and then Gresham City Hall in Cleveland. All of these locations will also be improved over time. We are including part-time warning devices, pavement delineation signage, and channelization. And one last comment, and that's to address the earlier comment that was made. It has taken us 25 years, and we've learned much over those 25 years. When there initially, back in 1986, there were a series of assumptions that were made. We're a lot smarter today. So our design criteria has been upgraded substantially. So are we making these improvements as we advance into new projects? The answer is absolutely, because our design criteria has been updated. And in fact, it continues to be updated. With these very improvements, we've gone back and are now beginning to make other upgrades to our design criteria, understanding that still there's much work to be done. So it's a work in progress, and we made improvements on the west side, and these are the improvements that we are intending to make on the east side. And as we learn more about pedestrian behaviors, we'll even make further improvements.
Questions or comments from the board?
Is this standard around the world? And I want to echo what that man said over there. As we build these things out, and has all this been incorporated up front, the upfront cost? There's a off-the-shelf way, if you can answer that. An off-the-shelf must be, shall be.
All of the improvements that you saw today have been incorporated in the PMLR project.
Okay.
All of the improvements that you saw today, if CRC goes forward, have been incorporated in those projects as well. Are these treatments standard around the world? The answer is no. The Europeans tend to treat things differently. There have been a series of projects through the Transit Cooperative Research Program that have studied a variety of treatments. That first report was Report 17 that went back to the late 80s. And at that time, there really wasn't any design criteria that was developed as to how to move forward. But over the years, there have been a series of other studies that have been performed, and the treatments that you are seeing today are ones that are being learned from TriMet. I mean, TriMet has been a leader in providing these types of improvements. So
I guess
it's work in progress. It's as we learn more about pedestrian behavior, about how light rail operates in the urban environment, we continue to make improvements.
I grew up outside of Philadelphia and used mass transit. We had the commuter trains and they had the high-speed lines. And these tracks go back to about way before me even, 1870s, 1880s. And every station where you go and get on, they had a tunnel that you could just walk through. And I'm not going to debate the cost of here, but you can't fix stupid.